Okay, hearing none, the next item is approval of minutes. I would be looking. Okay, we have a motion from Romick and a second from Mitchoff. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any Abelson, second from Abelson. Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Next item is the consent calendar.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Pierce and a second from Glover. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. And that brings us around to item 3.1, update on transportation funding package.
Commissioners, this is my items. We're blessed to have Assembly Member Jim Frazier here. I want to say a couple words before he starts. As you know, Jim Frazier started as a CAC member with this authority many, many years ago, and he worked his way up, and he was one of our board members, and he used to say on the most important transportation agency in Contra Costa. And so we're here he's here to give us an update on a very historic moment in time a few weeks ago, where one of the largest, if not the largest, funding package for California transportation was passed, and so he was part of it. So welcome back, Assembly Member and the Chair of the Transportation Committee for the Assembly, Mr. Jim Frazier.
Woohoo!
Thank you, Randy. I'm glad to see you still have a job.
Barely.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, good evening, and thank you so much to CCTA for inviting me here tonight to provide the board with an update on the legislature's new sustainable transportation funding package for California. This really is a full circle moment because the knowledge I gained serving first on CCTA's CAC and later as a CCTA board member, and many of you were here at that same time, and I absolutely appreciate your mentorship and your support on my moving into this position going forward, and for that I'm eternally grateful. We truly paved the way for a historic plan we passed just 13 days ago. Please know, as your representative in Sacramento and the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee, that I've always kept the needs of Contra Costa citizens in mind. Now, in my realm, I oversee 58,000 lane miles of highway, 13,000 bridges. The Caltrans, I think we're at 20,000 employees there. We have the Office of Traffic Safety, the DMV, and also the CHP. All seaports in California and all airports are under my purview. And that means that we oversee $2.3 trillion in commerce in California each and every day. And so just a real honor to be here to share with you some of the nuances of what went on trying to get that accomplished. But having grown up in Concord, I started my own business and living in East Contra Costa County. I know firsthand what it's like to travel on congested roadways along Highway 4 and 680 and the like, and understand all too well the infrastructure, safety, and funding needs we have. This region and her people drove my commitment to fix California roads. Every day for the last 2 years, I labored to push forward my proposal for a multi-billion, now $5 billion annual funding package. And 2 years ago, the governor in his State of the State declared that we needed $6 billion a year to start catching up on the deferred maintenance of California, and I took that to heart. So we're going to repair and maintain our state and local roads, improve our trade corridors, and support public transit and active transportation. As all of you know, there's a huge need for sustainable and long-term funding to fix California roads. And I can't thank CCTA enough and the efforts of all of you and staff and supporting vendors and contractors that actually are a partner with the state, with Measure J, going forward to to be part of being able to create your own destiny also going forward on projects that are very important to you. Although our Golden State has the world's 6th largest economy, we rank 45th nationally in overall highway condition, greatly impacting our state's economy, goods movement, and California businesses. As recently as last year, 41% of the highways and pavement in California required rehabilitation, replacement, or preventative maintenance. Poor road conditions cost California drivers an average of $760 a year in car maintenance alone. Our poor roads not only hurt our wallets, but also hurt our quality of life. Indeed, congested roads cause some of our fellow Californians to spend as much as 92 hours a year in traffic, taking precious time away from families and careers. Friends, our dream of better roads and transportation system has now become a reality. On April 6th, the legislature approved the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017 by a 2/3 vote of both houses. And I want to let you know there was 4 individuals that represent Contra Costa County that voted yes, and 2 voted no. And you know who they are. The bill invests $52.4 billion over the next decade, split equally between state and local investments, bringing over $5 billion annually in new transportation funds. But what that doesn't address is we were also able to put an index on there for every year for inflation. So the amount over 10 years will be closer to $60 billion to be able to work on transportation projects. And this is a very historic moment. And the culmination of years of effort from Governor Brown, Speaker Rendon, President Pro Tem De Leon, Senator Bellamy, and among others, this was a team effort. I also have to thank every person and every agency who came out to support this responsible and realistic plan to fix our roads here at home and across the state. It was a huge hurdle, though, and I'm grateful to all who advocated for their communities. The principal component of the bill is the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Program to address deferred maintenance on the state highway system and the local street and road system. The bill provides unprecedented levels of funding for public transit, with $785 million going to transit capital and operating expenses every year. There will be new investments in local entities as well as assistance for MTC and regional transit operators, including Eastern Contra Costa Transit Authority, Western Contra Costa Transit Authority, and the like. More than $1 billion will go towards capital improvements, including bridge repairs, trade and commute corridors, and local partnerships for self-help counties just like yours. It directs $150 million a year for active transportation programs, freeway service patrol, and SB 375 planning. The package also includes $25 million a year to local and regional governments for planning grants to revise local growth plans consistent with the requirements of SB 375. And as a bicyclist, and I haven't had a lot of time until this last 13 days, I'm proud to say that this plan not only focuses on our roads and our drivers, but also doubles the funding to enhance safety for our cyclists and pedestrians. So how is this funded? To pay for all of this, it's going to cost California drivers about $10 a month. The revenue sources for California's new transportation plan as follows. A 12 cents per gallon gasoline excise tax beginning November 1st, 2017. That hasn't been raised since 1993 with no indexing. The purchasing power of that right now is less than when it was conceived in 1923 when it was 2 cents a gallon. This, again, is historic. A diesel excise tax increase of 20 cents beginning November 1st, 2017, and a diesel sales tax increase of 4%. And that will go to primarily transit, the 4%. There will be an end of the BOE annual adjustment starting July 1st, 2019. And you know, a lot of the STIP was defunded this past year because of the true-up and the swap, where we lost about 12 cents a gallon and about $2 billion in revenue in the last 3 years. So we're going to stop that fuzzy math and continue and reset and go forward like we should have in the inset of going forward of that maneuver that just was bad. A transportation improvement fee of $25 to $175 per vehicle beginning in the spring of 2018. So for 87% of the vehicles that are on the road, the owner will pay less than $50 annually. Commercial trucks will have an exemption. Those driving zero-emission vehicles will pay $100 per vehicle each year beginning in 2020. And it was also important to me that transportation funding go to transportation projects. So I am proud to have authored Assembly Constitutional Amendment 5 that with voter approval provide constitutional protection to ensure that this revenue will not be diverted away from any transportation purpose. And I'm most happy to report that this funding package will greatly benefit the people of Contra Costa County. The new county investment for the STIP share to Contra Costa is an estimated $20 million a year. And an estimated, get ready, Federal and Karen, $194 million from the county road share. Under the new cities and streets and road investments for cities in my district, based on historical data, the city of Antioch will receive an estimated amount of about $25.85 million a year. The city of Oakley will receive an estimated $9.19 million, and the city of Pittsburgh will receive an estimated $15.52 million a year. These are at least double what they're receiving now. With the voters' failure to pass Measure X last November, I know how important this plan is to our region and to keep Contra Costa moving, and I promise to work with you legislatively on how we can help continue the good work that you're doing with the sales tax measure. I'm glad that the Road Repair and Accountability Act and ACA 5 will benefit and improve our state and local transportation network, create good local jobs, and protect our environment while protecting taxpayers' funds. It has been said that this transportation funding program will create 78,000 jobs in California alone. So it's important we keep every citizen mobile as it serves Californians of all ages and abilities. And I want to thank you to everyone who saw the potential in the plan and kept the faith that we would succeed in benefiting folks here at home and across California. A lot of folks tried to get me to acquiesce to the governor's plan about a year and a half ago, which is a little less than $3 billion, which would only put $1 billion into transportation network, basically. And I didn't go to Sacramento to accept mediocrity. And I kept asking, after the governor had actually in his State of the State several times state that there was a $6 billion need, I asked him, why are you trying to put out half a fire by only $3 billion? So my first, when I introduced, was $7.4 billion, and we met somewhere in the middle. So I look forward to our continuing partnership and working with the board, CCTA staff, our local transit partners in the region to keep Contra Costa moving forward. And I still say the Contra Costa Transportation Authority is the best transportation authority in Contra Costa County.
All right. That is indeed a good report. Commissioner Glover.
Thank you. Assemblyman Frazier, I just want to applaud your effort. I know we were on the phone some late nights and early mornings as you went through this very great effort that you put forth. I really want to give a lot of credit to you and Senator Bill for sticking to your guns and assuring that the governor would come around, in which we see in the last days that he did. And so I think you took the same bullheadedness that you had when you were serving on this authority to Sacramento, and you've been doing some extraordinary things since you've been there. I just want to share my appreciation for your work.
Thank you very much. One of the things that I'm also proud is that we were able to get AB 28 passed, which was the NEPA sovereign designation for Caltrans to be able to do their work this year also. So we've gotten some good things done. Want to work on some CEQA reform going forward and work on, again, how we can help Caltrans become a better agency.
Commissioner Hudson.
Yeah, it seems very little to say, thanks, Jim. It's only been, 10 years or whatever you've been trying to get this through, and obviously it just had to wait everybody out to see it your way. One thing that had me a little concerned when I read it, and I'm not sure that it's over and something still can't be done, or if you have the answer. When I looked at the VLF portion, $1.6 billion annually, and it talked about all the good things it would go to, and then right in the middle was what I missed the first 5 or 6 times I read it. After DMV costs. And that concerns me. Our Measure X administration was 0.5%. East Bay Regional Park District, I'm sorry, it was 0.5%. East Bay Regional Park District was 5%. That's a difference of $8 million or $80 million. That could go a long ways if we were putting it through the Carl Moyer program, the mobile source stuff we have at the Air District. Karen can get into it more. It's her subcommittee. Do we know what that is? I sure hope it isn't more than 5%. But
So what it is it's the first time set up for the implementation of that program. The motor vehicle program account pays for the DMV through registration already. So it's just the automatic startup of reformatting software.
well, you see where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, we'll have it clearly defined and make sure that you are your question is addressed by the DMV.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pierce.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you, Jim, and we are all very proud of you as one of those early on mentors that you referred to. You know, I'm not afraid to kick butt when I think you need it, and I was there praying for you. I was watching you as you made your presentation there in the assembly and going, "Go Jim, go Jim, go Jim," and then the storm that night knocked out the feed from the assembly, and it would come back on about 20 minutes later, and I'm going, please, please, please. So it was wonderful. I was very proud of you that night. I was very pleased. I was very nervous during the roll call vote, and I was texting my direct assembly member repeatedly during that long silence. But we are very proud of you, and thank you so much, because you know Contra Costa needs it desperately.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Pierce. I will tell you also, which we didn't share with, but $706 million of loans are repaid from the state through this process. $256 million will go to the state. $256 million will go to the local cities and counties, and another 200 and something where it's divided up 3 times will go to transit in California, because part of the TRP was loaned money also. So you're looking at, people are saying, well, they've been diverting funds, well, we got the loans repaid in this. There was $112 million paid last year in the budget. But also, one of the things that we weren't able to secure was the truckway fees. The approximate $1 billion. And the governor was steadfast on that. He still firmly believes that it's paying for transportation debt, which it is, but that's what we don't feel in my circles, that it was actually sold that way to the public when Prop 1B went out, is a general obligation bond. And so, that's $1 billion a year that we've got to find some revenue so that we can get a swap going and get that back with the intended purposes also. Then I'll be at $6.2 billion a year.
Good job.
Thank you.
Commissioner Warner.
I just want to add my personal thanks to say I'm honored to know you, Jim, and I'm proud that you went to Sacramento and remembered where you came from. Because as we know, too many people get there and they end up on a different trajectory. You've demonstrated that you can represent the state and that you can represent us locally. And you're doing a very good job of balancing that. Statewide, this would be one of the most significant pieces of legislation that we've seen probably in the past 40 years. And it's because it will set us in the future. It is in perpetuity. We have this attitude, well, we can only do things short term. And it was like your reference, do you want to put out half a fire, or do you want to put the whole fire out? This is a solution that we need. There was no funding mechanism for this. It's a world that we live in, and I think it sets a basis of how we can go forward. There are some people talk about making our nation great. This makes California really great. It creates us competitive to other states and other countries. I mean, we're much bigger. I just came back from Ireland. There's only 4.8 million people. It's one of the smallest European countries. Their infrastructure is perfect. It's amazing how they've invested. You go to Spain and places like that, and you get on a freeway, 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road, you have to get off because it's gone. They ran out of money because it was all short-term thinking. And their funding sources had very narrow windows on it. So this, by the time we really see all of the real benefits of this, you and I will have no hair left. But we really, really appreciate this. And somebody said, well, maybe this is it. You don't need to do anything else. Well, you know what? If you can do this, I'm sure you can do more. So anyway, just thank you, and we really appreciate you being in Sacramento.
I appreciate that. I'll let you know also some of the components that I left out. There is a TCIF component for freight of about $300 million a year. When we did Prop 1B, we put $1 billion towards freight, and it really did some great things. But when you think about $300 million a year going to freight dynamic only, we also have the congested corridors program that we've got about another, I think it's $300 million going to also. This was a great portfolio package that addressed many needs throughout California. And again, this is not a debt. This is pay go. And, you know, we're still, I think it's, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're going to be paying like $30 billion in debt service for Prop 1B, you know, on the $19 billion that we borrowed basically. And so, you know, we're going to be paying for that it did some wonderful things, but from this point forward, we're talking about paying as we go. So this is something that we're not creating debt, we're creating jobs, we're creating an economy, we're creating a quality of life. I mean, this thing is just, like I say, I'm very proud of what we accomplished. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Keller?
Thank you. And Jim, you mentioned it was a portfolio of issues. One of the things that was also included was transit statewide, not just in Northern California. And we just want to thank the legislature and you personally for all the hard work that went into that balance. It will ensure both from capital investment and operations, smoother operations into the future. And this is a very important thing for sustainable transit in the state of California. Thanks.
First year, the impact is $1 billion, and then it goes to 700 and something million a year. So this is, I mean, it's never been done in transit with this kind of investment. So we're looking at about creating different opportunities and augmenting even, Commissioner, your system can actually flourish continued with investment going forward. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I wouldn't want to follow that, but unfortunately somebody has to. So we have item 3B2, presentation by MTC on the 2017 Regional Transportation Plan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. Martin Engelman, CCTA Deputy Executive Director for Planning. Just a brief introduction here before we go to the presentation. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission is in the process of updating its long-range regional transportation plan. Federal rules require that MTC, as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Bay Region, develop and update an RTP every 4 years. The last update was adopted by MTC in 2013. As required by SB 375, the 2013 RTP included for the first time a Sustainable Communities Strategy element, which identifies the location and characteristics of priority development areas, or PDAs, which are transit-oriented development areas where a mix of housing and jobs close to transit can provide a catalyst for increased transit usage and reduced CO2 emissions from cars and trucks. The draft 2017 RTP was released by MTC on April 1st. A draft EIR for the plan was made available on April 14th. Comments on both the RTP and the DEIR are due by June 1st, 2017. CCTA staff is in the process of reviewing the draft RTP and will bring you back our comments at the May Authority meeting. So with that, I will introduce our presenter tonight. He made it here from San Francisco despite a BART shutdown. Ken Kirky, Director of Planning for MTC.
Good evening, Commissioners. And I'd like to make a special recognition of Commissioners Pierce, Glover, Mitchoff, and Hudson. I know the work they do for the region. I'm amazed that they do this as well, plus their local hat. So much appreciation for all that you do. As Martin said, Plan Bay Area is the regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy for the Bay Area. We also like to describe it as at this point, a 24-year regional vision for growth and investment. Plan Bay Area 2040 is the update to the plan adopted in 2013. We've described it as a limited and focused update. It's somewhat focused. It hasn't felt very limited in the midst of a lot of other things going on at the regional level right now, but we think it's a good draft plan. Some of the highlights in terms of the growth pattern, first looking at where we are and where we've been over the last several years, I think everyone is aware of the fact that we've seen significant job growth in the region. Since 2011, over 500,000 jobs were added in the region, but only 65,000 housing units were added, and that's created a lot of downward pressure on families and households and so forth. That has translated into a lot of pressures, again, as I'm sure you're all aware, on the transportation system. Congested delay on the freeways, but also big upticks in ridership, especially on the rail systems, including BART. The road so far for this plan, we've been at this for a little while now. It began spring 2015 with initial outreach in the region, subsequent outreach again in the spring of this past year. We released this document on March 31st, and we released the EIR, the draft EIR, last week. And as Martin said, we are aiming for adoption in July, and the comment period will close on June 1st for both documents. So in terms of where the growth goes, Martin also mentioned the priority development areas. This, like the last plan, is a relatively focused growth plan with a lot of the housing growth forecasted for the locally nominated priority development areas, roughly 3/4 of the growth in those areas. In terms of the subregions within the Bay Area, nearly half of the growth would be in the three largest cities, San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose, roughly 1/3 in the cities around the Bay, with the remainder in the smaller suburban communities in the inland areas of the region. The job distribution is also somewhat focused, but although not as focused as the household growth. We hear oftentimes the importance of job growth, and many communities we know want job growth. I'm going to talk a little bit about economic development in the action plan component of the plan. But the pattern is a little bit less focused, in part because jobs are difficult to control for. As challenging as housing support is at the regional level relative to jobs, there's very little in the way of direct anything relative to job growth. It's entirely local land use, and most of the communities in the region have a lot of capacity for job growth. So the split is roughly 43% in the big three cities, 40% in the Bayside cities, 17% in the inland coastal delta communities, and then the split between priority development areas and other areas is 55-45. Looking at Contra Costa specifically, there is a fair bit of growth forecast for Contra Costa County, roughly 100,000 households, 130,000 jobs. The bulk of the households would be in the priority development areas, and a substantial portion of the employment growth would be as well. This is still a regional transportation plan, which sometimes I think gets lost in the discussion about the growth forecast. It's the federally required and state required regional transportation plan for the region. We go out to 2040. We estimate how much money will be available that we can include in the plan that we can reasonably foresee. It's a fiscally constrained plan. It's not just a vision plan. Our estimate is that there's about $303 billion that can be expected from various sources, state, federal, and in particular regional and local, meaning county sources through 2040. Of those funds, this is very much a fix-it-first plan. About 90% of the funding is expected to go to operation or maintenance or modernization of the existing systems, with the latter relating to, for example, the BART system, new train cars, a new train control system, and so forth. Only about 10% of the funding is expected to expand the system. SB1, much to our surprise and delight, passed very late in the process of the draft plan. We have a category in the plan called anticipated unspecified that was included about 3 RTPs ago. It really looked at over time, historically, we have seen funding come to the region from various sources. We've kept a pretty conservative estimate, but there's a sizable amount of money there that we think for the next 4 years is appropriate to SB1, and the fact that SB1 is to a large extent a fix-it-first bill with a lot of funding, we think it's an appropriate categorization. So in terms of Contra Costa County, some of the major projects that were include the regional express lanes, the I-680, State Route 4 interchange, and San Pablo bus rapid transit. In terms of performance, this is a performance-based plan. In addition to the greenhouse gas target that the California Air Resources Board has given the region to achieve greenhouse gas reductions per capita, in addition to the requirement that the region plan for enough housing going forward to 2040, there are 10 other performance targets that the ABAG board members and MTC commissioners have adopted. And when we assess the draft plan, there are 5 that we have achieved, or the plan achieves. There are 4 that the plan moves in the right direction but falls short on. And there are 4 that we are moving in the wrong direction on. Most notably, and this was a theme through the preferred scenario, and it was such a dour theme that some of the board members and commissioners wondered whether it should be called a preferred scenario. But essentially, in terms of adequate housing, we say that we achieve that by fiat, because we plan for locations for housing. It's 100%. It looks good. But that's for planning purposes. When we assess housing and transportation affordability, the cost of housing plus transportation for households out through 2040, the trajectory for the region is not good, and most of that is related to the supply of housing and the cost of housing over time getting worse. And this has gotten a lot of attention. It got a lot of attention at the executive board and commission levels, and I'm going to, in a moment, talk about a starting point to try to address that. So the draft plan can be found online at planbayarea.org. More so than in the past, we are not distributing lots of glossy documents. We put a lot of work into the website. We think it's a pretty nice-looking website. The sections are as described on the screen. Section 1, the Bay Area Today, really describes some of the challenges the region faces, particularly around affordable housing and housing affordability writ large. Sections 2, 3, and 4 really describe the central parts of the plan, the regional transportation plan, the overall approach to projects, the growth forecast, and the distribution, and how the plan performs. And Section 5 is an action plan, which I'll describe in a moment. There are 16 supplemental reports, and now the EIR can be viewed as well, and I'm sure you're anxious to get home and look at all of that. We are able to accept comments online. We have a lot of outreach events coming up. We're going to lots of meetings around the region. This is a region of 7.5 million people. We're hoping that we'll get a lot of responses online. So in November, when the Executive Board and the Commission adopted the final preferred scenario, they directed staff to also develop something called an action plan. And as we move forward with the draft plan, this is the part of the plan that's still very much in development. It's still very much a draft. And we were asked to focus on 3 issue areas where the plan is off trajectory. One is housing, as I mentioned, another is economic development, and a third is resilience. So in terms of housing, the proposed actions at this point are to really work with partners, work with entities to develop funding and legislative solutions for housing that could really make a difference. Issues that have been raised to date include potentially providing new incentives for housing. There will likely be debate about whether or not transportation funding, new transportation funding, should be tied to housing goals. There is discussion about the fact that redevelopment was eliminated in the midst of the first set of SB 375 plans, which made the implementation of the plans that much more challenging. Is there something that could replace that? And I think one of the key items of discussion at the board and commission level has been that, you folks who are in city council meetings and boards of supervisors meetings dealing with these issues need tools and need support, because this is a slog week after week after week when there are very few tools and there's a lot of opposition, and there's also not a lot of understanding about how an individual project can achieve a regional objective for future generations. So there's a lot of work to be done, and that's why this is being called out as an important area of action. In terms of economic development, there is already some significant work underway. ABAG staff has been working on the basis for creating an economic development district for the Bay Area. This is one of the few major regions in the country that is not eligible for a lot of U.S. Economic Development Agency grants because we don't have a regional economic development district. So that is something that is being pursued. There's also a potential consideration down the road of what are called priority production areas. They would be somewhat similar to the priority development areas and priority conservation areas, with a focus on industrial lands that should have priority for future production and distribution and so forth. The northern waterfront area here in Contra Costa County is probably the preeminent example of what a really solid one might be. I think there will likely be discussion about the details and some refinement to not cast the net too wide and not have priority production areas be something that would be applied to areas where people just don't want anything to happen, that were once industrial but might not be now and might not be viable in the future. I'll also mention, in terms of the third area, resilience. This is focused on a few different priorities. One is that in terms of climate adaptation and sea level rise in particular, there are a number of agencies as well as county governments, local governments that are active in this field. There's a lot of good work occurring, but it doesn't seem to be super well coordinated at this point. There's not a clear strategy in terms of how to move on an issue that's going to become more and more of a challenge for us as we move forward. It's not easy to deal with governance issues, but the recommendation is that for this issue we probably should, and it's something that should be advanced moving forward. ABAG has a history of working on earthquake preparedness, earthquake recovery, hazard mitigation. That work would continue. We want to see that to continue to advance and tied more closely to work related to transportation infrastructure. And lastly, I'll touch on an effort that CCTA staff has been involved with fairly significantly related to regional advanced mitigation planning. Right now, transportation project mitigation tends to be done on a project-by-project basis, which can be very slow, it can be costly, and the conservation benefits don't necessarily accrue to the Bay Area as well as they might. MTC staff has been working with the Nature Conservancy, the State Coastal Conservancy, as well as to a significant degree CCTA, Valley Transportation Authority staff, and other CMA staff on coming up with a potential approach that would make mitigation more predictable, might make it more efficient in terms of cost, and still result in greater conservation benefits. And we hope to bring something forward to the Commission for consideration in either May or June, more likely June, I think, at this point, for potential inclusion in the final plan, which is slated for adoption, as I said, in July. So there's lots of outreach going on. This is one of the 9 briefings of elected officials around the region. Last Thursday I was in San Mateo. We're doing meetings with a number of equity-oriented community-based organizations, including one in Richmond. We have public hearings coming up on the draft plan and the draft EIR. And we have 9 open houses, including one here in Walnut Creek on May 10th at 6:30 p.m. And those are structured to be interactive events where your constituents, residents of the region, can come and interact on a variety of topics. And in particular, we're really hoping we will get a lot of feedback on the action plan and how people would like to see that proceed. And again, people can submit comments directly to planbayarea.org. It's open till the end of May. And that slide is what I hope August looks like for those of us involved in this effort. So thank you. With that, I will stop and try to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, comments? Commissioner Arnott, did you have?
Just a question. Thank you for the presentation. You actually took something on a very big scale and brought it down in a very short, concise. I've been looking the past couple of days at the website, and it is good. It's got a lot of depth and information. Question I have is, it looks like the number one priority of a capital project is high-speed rail, $8.5 billion. It's ranked as number one. Could you maybe explain that a little bit? What's that scope? Where's it going to go to? Of that $8.5 billion, where's that source of money coming from? And I didn't see the detail on that.
So the Bay Area components of high-speed rail are included in the plan. It's not fully funded. There's a significant portion of funding that we had hoped would be funded, Caltrain electrification, which has been a major project for several RTPs, and as I think everyone knows, is now on hold, I guess. There is significant funding that is assumed related to cap and trade funding for some of the other components, and there are other portions that are not yet funded, but there is a belief, there is a forecast that we will be able to secure funding through 2040, significant enough to include it in the plan. There are a lot of projects in the plan that are not fully funded. Most of those that are fully funded will be moving to the Transportation Improvement Plan in the next few years, and many of the projects are not fully funded.
Thank you for that. Is there a section here that shows what those funding levels are? Is there a matrix there that says, because it sort of looks like if you read it without much knowledge, it's, wow, you got a lot of money. But in fact, you read the print and it says, just as you said, not a lot of it. Is there something that really summarizes, here's what we have, here's the shortfall, and is there estimates where that's targeted?
It is outlined in the supplementary report related to funding. What I can do, because I don't have it in front of me and I want to be specific, is follow up with you and I'll send that information to the
I think it'd be good
commission.
for all of us to kind of know, because what's being relied upon from us and our TPCs and everything. So thank you. Thanks for being
Commissioner
here.
Glover?
Thanks for being out, Ken. Great presentation tonight. And I'm certainly glad that you mentioned the northern waterfront, because I think that that's one of the opportunities that hits us right in the face. I know there's many more within the county here, but that's one that's pretty much have some legs now, and we're looking for to be able to do the planning activities around that that's necessary. So I'll be working closely with you to try to see where our eligibility fits in, because the funding source is going to be very important for us to do the type of development that's needed around the area.
Terrific. Thank you.
Commissioner Pierce?
Yeah, thank you, Ken, for coming out. I just wanted to give credit to the tremendous amount of work that both the MTC and the ABAG staff have put into getting this plan done. As Ken said, it is considered a bit of a minor update because it doesn't have the RENA stuff in it that we will have to do again in 4 years. But it's a big effort, and we're trying to be as aspirational as we can be and recognize the problems that we're facing and try to provide some real on-the-ground solutions. And as Ken said, the action plan is still in its formative stages. So whatever information we can get from local jurisdictions in particular about how we can be helpful and how we can interact on that, aside from pots of money and getting rid of all the NIMBYs in the world, is is something we really need to know. And the other thing that I want to stress from the ABAG standpoint is all of our staffs, but particularly the ABAG staff, have developed over the years personal relationships with all of our jurisdictions. And as we go forward in the staff merger, I think Ken will back me up here, that we are trying to forge even stronger relationships with the individual MTC staffs as well, and have them really working as a team to serve all of our local jurisdictions. And I know Ken is committed to that. I know that my staff on ABAG are committed to that, and we're really looking forward to how we can become a much stronger regional agency working together to serve all of our regional and local jurisdictions. So good job, and we will see what comments we get and how far we can go, and I can't wait to see where we plug these new numbers in, especially on that one at the last, where we were falling very short on the road maintenance, the local streets and roads maintenance. It seems like that one, with the passage of SB1, might slide over at least into the middle column and maybe actually toward the left-hand column of doing okay.
Thank you, and it's clearly going to make a really big difference, and that is part of the reason why at this stage of the game we're going to go with the category we have in the plan, because we think it would shift enough things that we would be talking to you all about this plan for a lot longer instead of getting to the implementation of it. So, thank you.
Commissioner Warner?
Just wanted, we were going to maybe pass on some comments. I mean, we've talked about the presentation, that I think, we're at a point in time, as we looked at our Measure Acts, we learned a lot of lessons about looking deeper into what are our future problems look like. And the I-680 corridor is clearly going to be the sort of the Achilles tendon that's going to get severed. It's at a point in time, really from across the bridge to the north, all the way to Fremont, is nearly gridlocked. And, we're thinking the high-speed lanes are going to help. Well, by the way, gridlock means those lanes right now are zero movement for about an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And that time frame is moving longer and longer. And I would think it would behoove us and with MTC and our staff to make sure that that is so critical for the workforce. It's not as much good movements, and we focus on good movement, but you don't need goods if you don't have people getting to their jobs. And given that this report shows that 55% of all of the housing needs is going to be in 3 cities, we know where that is. That means you have to drive to get to those places or some other method. That I think we ought to be moving up the I-680 corridor, because we spend a ton of money and a lot of great solutions on 4. 80 is still a problem, but there are things that are happening. But I think we need to elevate this up with some real solutions, because there's not enough pavement width. And the more that it shows up in a regional plan, the more likely we are to be able to get our local constituents to say, hey, we're part of this plan. We're going to make our contribution towards that. So just as advocating, I think, from Contra Costa County, I think that's important.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yeah, only because we brought up the question about the high-speed rail. I would point out this is not just a regional issue. Back at the APTA conference, the subcommittee for rail to the reports on the APTA conference highlighted one project. It's the one they're watching the most, the Peninsula Corridor. And you just talked about it, Newell. The Peninsula Corridor ridership is up tremendously. If we can get that electrified from San Jose up to the Transbay Terminal, instead of being, sorry, Joel, stuck on the Embarcadero, I'd say escalators, but they're never working, so you're stuck on the, it's going to make a tremendous difference when we're talking about these kind of numbers in the 3 cities. And now you're tying together the Oakland and San Jose, San Francisco in very short time. If you can get 11 stops in the same time that you're getting 7 now, that's going to make a difference to people coming up the corridor. And that location of the Transbay Terminal is going to make a tremendous difference.
What's the capacity?
And I have a modest request. Not too long ago, I may have actually talked to you about this, but Not too long ago, Richmond adopted a special area plan for one of our PDAs. And the plan increased the density of the area by thousands of units, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. And so the EIR preparer informed us that we had to adopt findings of overriding considerations because we were increasing traffic, increasing congestion, increasing emissions, and so on and so forth. And it didn't make any sense to me because a PDA is in fact a mitigation. You know, why would you have to adopt a finding of overriding consideration for a mitigation that's solving a much bigger problem? And there's some real dangers in this also because it encourages the NIMBYs, you know. If people see that kind of thing coming out as something they can latch onto. And I don't know how you do it, but I think either through a separate legal opinion or a policy thing or something you incorporate into the EIR on this, there ought to be something that basically says that if you're doing a project in a PDA that does some of these things and increases density and some of the things that go along with it, that these are not considered unavoidable adverse impacts. You know, this is exactly what it's supposed to do. That's why we're doing PDAs. So that's my modest request.
I guess I would just generally say in an overarching way that, you know, CEQA has many merits, but supporting infill development is not one of them. And that's something we've heard again and again. And I think it's the kind of thing related to the action plan that is probably going to be discussed quite a bit. And also the SB 743, which is not yet implemented, should help with some of the dynamics you're talking about because it attempts to move beyond exactly what you described.
Did I talk to you about this at the time?
You did, yes.
Okay, so, you know, I talked to you and somebody from ABAG, and I got a lot of sympathy, but that was about all. And so, you know, the way I solved it, I got an attorney to write some language, and our city attorney said, well, what you're doing is risky, you know, somebody could sue us. And I said, well, you know, let's just do it and see what happens. So we wrote language that worked for us and adopted it. Nobody sued us, and we're home free. So I'm thinking maybe this is something that MTC or ABAG jointly or otherwise could do is just get legal counsel to prepare an opinion that people can use. And unless somebody successfully sues you, it works, you know. So that's my advice and my request.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for your presentation. Now, this is delineated as a feedback and direction. Do we have any direction from anybody other than what I've given you?
6-8.
Okay, so I think we're done with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, which brings us to regular agenda item 4A14, authorize the issuance of up to $100 million aggregate principal amount of Contra Costa Transportation Authority sales tax revenue bonds for the purpose of financing Measure J projects.
Good evening, Chair Tom Butt, Commissioners, Representatives. My name is Randy Carlton. I'm the CFO for the authority. The item before you is an action item. It will allow for the issuance of $100 million of revenue bonds secured by our sales tax revenues to continue funding the Measure J capital project program. You know, bonds help us to accelerate project delivery in comparison to a pay-as-you-go method where we would need to accumulate those funds and then pay for those projects once we have enough money in the bank. We currently have 3 bond transactions outstanding, total debt of $420 million. This seems like a large number. Relatively speaking, however, the authority is not heavily leveraged. Our expenditure plan places a limit that our debt cannot exceed 42.5% of our sales tax revenues. Another way of looking at this is that we have $2.35 of sales tax revenue for every dollar of debt. We prudently use debt, are always on the watch for opportunities to restructure our debt, to make our debt more efficient and save money for our taxpayers. Today, staff is seeking authorization to issue the next series of our bonds. It's $100 million of funding. It will enable us to keep pace with our expectations established in the strategic plan. A few things to note about this particular bond transaction. It's known as the Series 2017A bonds. The bonds are fixed rate, conventional bonds, no bells or whistles to speak of. They will be repaid semi-annually through the final year of maturity in 2034. The proposed bonds are high investment grade AA+, AA+ by Fitch and S&P. The bonds will be sold in a national public offering managed by Morgan Stanley and locally and regionally by Walnut Creek firm Alamo Capital. We expect strong demand for the authority's high-grade bonds. The market is currently favorable, stable. Interest rates following the election rose, peaked in December, and then have since come back down. Relatively speaking, rates are very attractive for us. Based on the current market, our estimate of our total all-in cost of borrowing for the proposed bonds is 3.03%, slightly better than what we were talking about when we presented this to the APC earlier this month. And the final comment about the 2017 Series A bonds is that this is the last bond transaction anticipated for the authority. That's not to say we won't ever issue new bonds again. You know, we will look for opportunities if they should be presented to leverage perhaps the remaining part of our 42.5% for capital projects. Our next steps is we have a series of investor outreach meetings scheduled for mid-May. The pricing on the bonds, which is a process where the interest rates are set, that is scheduled for May 18th, and we will close the transaction on June 1st. All the required documents have been prepared by our legal team of Best and Krieger, Mala, and her colleagues have been working with us on that. We also have a disclosure counsel who's in the audience, Jackie Jennings. We have a financing team, financial advisor with public financial management with Peter Schellenberger, Daniel GC. The banking team, Morgan Stanley, we have Adam Aranda, and Margie is here as well. And then with Alamo Capital, Jerry Liang is here tonight as well. Everything is all set. APC recommendation is that the board approve the resolution before you, and we're happy to take any questions you may have. Staff recommendation is to approve the resolution.
Commissioner Arnick?
I just want to commend you and Randy and everybody. AA+, I know we were a little higher. I tell you what, there's nobody else that does. And to have it from both agencies is pretty extraordinary. It's a great team out there. And at basically around number 3%, who would have thought that we'd be in this position? So that just means our capacity to do more work is just enhanced by that. So I'd be honored to move the item.
Second.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
You did.
Oh, you did make a motion.
Over here, seconded and third over here.
Motion by Arnick, second by Hudson. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion is unanimous, it carries.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay, next item, 4A15, Interstate 680, State Route 4 Interchange Improvements, Phase 3 widening, authorization to issue request for proposal for construction management services.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Ivan Ramirez, and I am the construction manager for the authority. And as mentioned by the chair, this is an action item for, we're seeking approval for construction, for an RFP, request for proposal for construction management services for the Interstate 680 State Route 4 interchange project. And this is how the intersection looks today. It's a cloverleaf intersection. And there are significant improvements that can be made here, but the major problem is that as traffic tries to loop around some of those on-ramp and off-ramps, it creates significant backup at both State Route 4 and I-680. The project is actually 5 phases, but our presentation today is related only to phase 3, which is primarily consists of widening State Route 4 from just, that would be east of Glacier Road, past Route 242 and just west of Port Chicago Highway. The project will provide extension of an HOV lane by 2 miles in the eastbound direction. It will also add 3.6 miles in the westbound direction of mixed flow lane and 2.4 in the eastbound direction. It will widen and seismic retrofit 5 bridges, which is actually paired, so it's actually 10 bridges. We'll also raise and replace Grayson Creek. There is a problem there with future global warming, having some raise in the water level, and we're going to have to replace that bridge. And along with raising and replacing that bridge, we're also going to be raising some of the road as it approaches the bridges. There will also be some outside of the roadway and bridges widening to provide current safety standards. Of course, there will be drainage system modifications because we're going to have the new roadway. We're going to have enhanced lighting and high visibility pavement delineation to improve the safety of the road. And in addition to that, we're going to do some rehabilitation of the current pavement, which is in some areas is in really bad condition. So that's phase 3. The status of it is that the environmental revalidation and the technical studies are complete. The package, the plans estimate and the specifications is at 95%, and that's why we're bringing this item to you today, because at this point is where we want to bring the construction management services firm to help us with the buildability and complete the constructability so that we can incorporate their comments into the package before it goes out to construction. Right away, we're making offers on some easements, and we're also acquiring some easements right now. The draft permits have been submitted to the pertinent environmental agencies, and we also have completed some design or some relocation work for Kinder Morgan and Phillips 66 pipelines. And just recently, we got Caltrans approval for the authority to advertise, award, and administer this construction project. So the problem with phase 3 as it is right now is that we have a severe funding shortfall. We have money from Measure J, 35 million, Measure C, 17.3, STIP money, but we have a shortfall of about $58 million. So staff is proposing to deliver this project with what we call a additive breathing strategy, where we're going to complete the design, the right-of-way and permitting at 100% and have it what we call shovel-ready. And the construction contract will go out by having a base work and then an optional work. So that way, with the base work, will be completed no matter what, because we will use the funding that we have currently available to get that phase of the work done. And right now, staff is hopeful that we will get either regional Measure 3 money or some SHOP money from recently passed SB1 or federal funds to come and backfill that void. And should that be the case, then we will execute or go ahead and proceed with the optional portion of the work by a specified date. So with that, I'm going to show you what, well, before I go, I want to tell you that TransPac approved this strategy at their February 2017 meeting. So with that, this is what the base work is going to entail, and it's a little bit hard to read, but the yellow that you see there going in the eastbound direction is the widening along the median where we're going to put the HOV lane. So right where the yellow line starts there, that's where the new HOV lane will start. The brown indicates the widening of the bridges, so we're going to be widening Walnut Creek as part of the base work. And we're also going to widen Solano Way, and again, continuing the widening along the road. Going eastbound, then Peralta Road. We're not going to have to do any widening on the bridges over State Route 242. And then right where the yellow line ends is where the existing HOV lane is. So we'll be extending that HOV lane by what it amounts to 2 miles. So the primary benefit of this strategy is that currently the HOV vehicles that go northbound on T42 and then merge on eastbound Route 4 want to merge very quickly to the HOV lane. It creates a lot of friction, and that begins to back up traffic on State Route 4. So with this strategy, we will be able to put traffic on 680 going northbound and then go westbound on State Route 4 and get on that HOV lane way before where the merging currently occurs, and hopefully the HOV vehicles will take that route, and the mixed flow lanes vehicles on State Route 242 will stay on the mixed flow lanes on State Route 4. So with that, these are the milestones that we have in mind. We'll complete the PS&E package in January of 2018, put the construction contract to advertise in March 2018, award it in June, and start construction in August of 2018. So what we're asking you to do today, and where the committee APC recommended that you do, is to allow us to issue the RFP with this strategy in mind to proceed in this fashion, and hopefully we'll be able to secure some funding in the near future where we'll be able to complete the entire project. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Good. Okay, Commissioner Pierce?
I'd just like to say thank you to the staff for working on this for so many years. This is a project that when we first conceived of it over 20 years ago in the Trans-Pac region, it was one phase. And then we realized it was going to be so monumentally expensive that we had to figure out how to break it into pieces. And I have to tell you, I called at that time Barbara Neustetter, who was our executive director in Trans-Pac, and said, I want to break this into pieces. And she thought I was crazy. And we did it, and now we've broken it down actually into multiple phases of phases in some cases. But the intent is ultimately to get 3 lanes through the 680 interchange from Morello Avenue all the way out to 242. Because the 684 interchange is so incredibly congested, and because it's a nerve-wracking, to say the least, interchange to traverse in any direction at any time, quite frankly. But particularly if you're traveling east and west on Highway 4 through that area, the merging traffic, because of particularly 680 and Pacheco Boulevard, are really tough. And there isn't a whole lot of room to do that in. And we feel that the interchange would be far safer if it were possible to have 3 lanes, so that there can be one true through lane. And then the middle lane is a little bit as the people are merging over to the HOV lane, and then there's the weave lane. But this is something we've been working on for well over 20 years, and I cannot tell you how excited I am that we're actually getting to the point of putting shovels in the ground and getting it fixed. I am also very highly optimistic from what I've been told by our local legislators in Sacramento that we will be successful in achieving some SHOP money for this as we go forward. And that would be tremendous. So we're going to hold their feet to the fire and make sure we actually get it. But so I'm hoping you don't have to have a what if, an additive deal. I'm hoping we can actually let the whole thing all at once, but we'll see.
Commissioner Arnick.
I think this is a great example of what a lean, well-organized agency can do, because we can AAA projects. We could do this. If this were sort of a Caltrans project, it wouldn't happen. All the money would have to be in the bank up front. I think, as Julie just said, we are well poised to have this project done 100%, given the funding commitments that we've heard. And it's also a very creative way to do this. I think it also sets in the bidding process for everybody involved. Ad alternates are basically what we're proposing here. Those are good techniques in a tight marketplace, or even a competitive marketplace, to get good pricing. So I think this has got everything lined up to be a really good project. And I would second the motion that I know Julie was
Is that a
making.
motion?
Yes, it was.
Motion by Pierce, second by Arnick, and we have two more speakers. Commissioner Trotter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support the motion as well, assuming that our local legislator does come through and get us the shop funding. I hope that we'll give some consideration to approaching Caltrans to rename it the Tim Grayson Creek Bridge.
Commissioner Mitchell, did you?
I was going to make a motion, but sorry.
Okay, all right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
We'll get it.
Okay, so, let's see. None. Any comments on correspondence and communications, other than what's in your packet? Any reports from associated committees? Hearing none. Commissioner and staff comments. The chair has none. Commissioners? Commissioner Pierce?
Yeah, I need to report out that on your behalf, as your designee, I attended the CalCog Regional Conference in Monterey, and CCTA is well received there and very well respected. And we had a lively conference talking largely about SB1, about some of the future innovations of what councils of government and MPOs can do. It's a lively group. We now have 45 members, so almost all of the transportation authorities in the state are now members. And we still have a few aspiring counties to become self-help counties, but they're part of our group to try and learn from us how we can make projects most efficient. So a good group of folks and a lively meeting, and well done. Thank you.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yeah, the Air District, Karen and I leading the way past the 2017 Clean Air Plan, so I hope we don't see that again for how many years. Saturday, I looked at my front door, and there's a box that I thought, why did my wife order all these books? This is heavy. And then I opened it. The EIR might have been the small part of it. A lot of reading over the last 72 hours.
Good for you.
Okay, good work.
No, I do highlights.
Executive staff comments.
Just brief comment, Chair.
Oh, okay,
So,
sure.
as your representative on the San Joaquin Rail Board, the three state-funded rail agencies met earlier this week in Sacramento for our periodic meeting. As a result of the Assembly's action and expected governor's signature, San Joaquin, each of the three rail systems will get $5 million per year for the life of the measure. We also have funding to make major modifications to the Antioch station, which we're doing in cooperation with the city of Antioch. And we are going to introduce an early morning train getting to Sacramento in hopes of adding some commute traffic. And we are looking at possibly providing service further north of Sacramento up to Yuba City and Marysville.
Was it early?
The idea is to get into Sacramento by 8 or 8:30, starting in Fresno at 4.
4 a.m. or
a.m. Yeah, we only run 2 trains a day to Sacramento. Yeah.
I think I'll miss that one. Okay, Randy?
Commissioners, I have 4 things to say tonight. First thing, we've had a number of cool meetings with a lot of cool companies over the past, since we last met, and they're all in my executive director report. Turns out that there's a lot of people outside of this organization that reads my executive director's report, and so one of the requests we got from a reporter is to get an update on this robotics effort that we have with the city of Pittsburgh and the city of Oakley. They haven't started that pilot project, so I guess people are reading this on the outside. We've had some interviews with San Francisco Chronicle. We took them out to the test bed. We also had Lindsay and I went out and had a conversation with AAA for the VIA magazine. I don't know if you've read that, but I think that's a big thing because there's quite a 3.5 million readers or something like that. So they're going to read about the innovations that are going on out at the test bed in the city of Concord. And it's rumored that the Today Show is also interested, and so we'll find out whether or not they'll come out to the Momentum station. And, okay, whatever. And then we had our third annual Redefining Mobility Summit, and thank you to all of you that came out and participated. It was sold out a couple weeks before the final day. It was the best one so far. I mean, the quality of the speakers, including Commissioner Hudson, talked about a lot of different things. And the last thing I would say is we've hired a replacement for Ross. Commissioner Tatson and City Manager Sobrani and I were on a panel, and Christina Broadfoot was watching as well, because that will be a kind of her lead worker. Because we've changed the reporting requirements because the supervisors of all the admin staff now is Terry Ann. But we hired Tim Hale, and he's agreed to move from Southern California. Tim works for RBF. Well, he used to work for RBF. Now he works for Michael Baker. Prior to that, he worked for Caltrans. So he's got state-level experience, consulting-level experience, and so he's coming to work for us, and I think he'll be a great addition. Well, I know he'll be a great addition for us, so I'm excited about his arrival.
When?
May 3rd.
You have one more to report out.
Wait. Is he a bridge person or a highway person?
He's actually an operations person, so he understands freeway operations. Yeah, he's managed that. Do I have something else to report on?
While you were gone playing, I was working.
Oh, yes, and we did have a ribbon or a groundbreaking for the last segment of State Route 4, at least that we're kind of working on, Balfour, and so the mayor was up and he did the emceeing, and I understand that you broke a record of saying my name, so I really appreciate that for saying it 52 times in that groundbreaking ceremony, because I would have never said my own name, but I appreciate that.
To be frank and honest with everybody, so we clear the air, I introduced myself as Randy Iwasaki.
Well, I do have one other thing to add. So I did another interview today with ENR Magazine, that's the Engineering News Record, and they were interested in number one question is, why are you so innovative? Why is CCTA so innovative? And I said a lot of it has to do with the interaction with the board. The board is supportive of what staff does as far as innovation is concerned. The topic was drones. Why are you using drones to inspect on Balfour, the Balfour project? And why not somebody else? And I said, we're interested in we have two things: one, safety of our employees and efficiency of our work, and making sure the taxpayers get what they pay for. And so this technology, you can fly the technology. The first pass was too high and too fast. You couldn't get the resolution you needed to make good surveying shots. So we lowered the drone, slowed it down. And if you think about it, some congestion is caused by when people are walking around on the shoulders and traffic slows down and causes a little bit of congestion. So this gets the surveyors out of that way for that purpose, but also they're in harm's way when they walk around the shoulder. And so we're trying to use technology where we can to keep people out of harm's way. And when the angle is too great or there's things in the way, then we'll go ahead and do it the normal way, the old way. But they were very interested in Ivan's innovation program. So they were. I think it was a good interview. So we'll see. So if you have any questions
Any questions?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody have any comments on the calendar? Okay, so now we need to go into closed session, so this is limited to commissioners and to, at least at the beginning, to Randy. And are we back in session? Okay, we stand reconvened. And if there's no further business,
We have no reportable action.
we have no reportable action. This item will be on our next board meeting agenda. We are adjourned.
The last time we went back there, that my wife and I talked so much that we were in the car Saturday night, she had to watch a dog and a cat for a month. She's like, "Ken, I'm flying." I said, "Wait a